Click play and call it work.
Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to this Sit and Talk, our Ask Me Anything show, where we rotate between different content producers each week and answer your questions. Now, we've tried doing these live for a few weeks, and I wasn't a big fan of it. I enjoyed doing it live, but the interaction wasn't what I was looking for, in the sense that if you weren't able to get on it live, you couldn't ask questions. And so the majority of our viewers were unable to ask questions to be answered in these shows. That's the main reason that we've decided to switch back to doing these not live. And then, of course, it took a couple weeks to get back into our habits. And so this will be the first official Sit and Talk return from the live ones back to the regular ones. So other than that, it's going to act very much like the ones from before, where you ask questions, and then the following week the next content producer is answering those questions. And as I say that, I realize I forgot to check who's next week, which I know it's always the same, and I always remember or always forget. Looks like next week is Josh, which means also Lee will be joining him. So Josh and Lee. So if you want to leave them questions, the best way, and the best way to do that is to leave it on our website. But you can also leave it here on YouTube. In the past, we've disabled YouTube comments, but I think that limits how many questions that we're actually getting. And although it's nice to be able to have them organized on our website, you can leave them in the YouTube comments as well, or you can leave them on the MiniWarGaming website. Make sure you thumb up any questions that other people are doing that you think you would like to have answered as well, and then we usually take the top comments and then some random ones after that. We don't usually get through all of them just because there's often too many. But this time, because there wasn't a previous one, I actually went on Facebook and then went on our YouTube community, and I posted there to ask questions, so I'm going to be drawing questions from that. And this show normally runs for about half an hour for free, and then for our Vault members, we do another half an hour of answering more questions for them. If obviously today I don't know which ones are Vault members, which ones aren't, because they're posted on Facebook and on our YouTube community. So I'll just continue answering questions. I might run a little longer than half an hour. In fact, I need to start my timer because I forgot to. So I'm just going to put my phone right here off camera and hit start. That way I can just keep track of how long I've been going for. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward, just answering questions, usually about wargaming, usually about our business. Sometimes they can get personal, and that's fine. Obviously, I reserve the right to not answer questions, and which obviously I should reserve that right. And so yeah, let's just go into this. So I'm going to start on Facebook, and I ask people to thumbs up questions that they'd want, and that way I can kind of rank them by top comments. So I'm just going to start with Lawrence Cuckoo. As the team's been at a lot of events recently, and Quirk has appeared on streams and podcasts with other content producers. Any more plans to collaborate more directly with other content producers in the future? Would be great to see MiniWarGaming versus the Long War Apocalypse Battle. A guy can dream. The answer is both yes and no. No in the short term, yes in the long term. Once the new MiniWarGaming bunker is complete, we are going to be inviting more other YouTubers down to join us for a week or whatever we can do to do some filming together. So the bunker is going to open up a lot of possibilities for what we can do for our business. Like right now, if we invite people down, they've got to find their own place to stay, and we got to work them into our schedule. But with a new place, with more studios and things for them to do afterwards, it'll be a lot more fun, and also will help to promote the new place as well. So that is the plan long term. Short term, we don't have very many plans. Having said that, I have been looking at certain things about getting some other YouTubers to do some content for us, but that's very early in stages, so don't want to bother talking about that right now. Trey Sutherland says, you've often said that new subscriptions are one of the main ways you judge the success of a project. As a current subscriber, how can I best support projects I really like? And how much do you factor in current subscriber viewing in judging a project's success? I actually look at both of them heavily. Obviously, new signups are important. The reason that I say new signups are so important is because I realize that you're playing both a get new people and retain the people you have kind of business or kind of game. And so when I see that a lot of people sign up for content, that tells me that it's something that people are interested in. And so that means that most likely the Vault members who are already in there will continue to want to do that. I know, like, you might think leaving comments saying this is why I have my Vault subscription helps, and that definitely does contribute. Although the problem is, if a handful of people say this is why I have my Vault subscription, that's hardly empirical data when you're dealing with a large number of Vault members. So the way I look at it are actually just views. So simply by viewing the content, you are technically voting for it. Like, interesting fact, for example, is when you look on our YouTube channel, and you look at our YouTube battle or our Warhammer 40k battle reports compared to our Warhammer 40k narrative campaigns, you might make the false assumptions that our battle reports are better for business because they get a lot more views than the narrative campaigns do. But me having the data behind the scenes, I see that the narrative campaigns, one, get a lot more vault signups. We're talking the Deathwatch Apothis narrative campaign got as many vault signups as all of our 40K battle reports from the past 6 months got. And I think actually even more than they all got from the past 6 months. And two, when you look at the views in the vault, you actually find that 40K battle reports are about the same as the 40K narrative campaign. And what that tells me is that the reason, or it tells me two things. One, that they're popular for our vault members. And two, that the people that are watching for free, and this makes sense, don't necessarily want to watch our narrative campaigns, because why would you watch a show that you only get to see every other episode of? And normally you would think, well, wouldn't you lead to the conclusion then to do like narrative campaigns all for free and one's all in the vault? But those just don't seem to do well. I've experimented with that. And even though I say that people don't really like the every other episode thing, I do notice that every other episode, when episode 3 goes out for a narrative campaign, that we see another spike in vault signups. It almost reminds people, oh yeah, I do want to watch that. And the week after, another episode comes out, excuse me, and they say, oh yeah, I wanted to watch that. So that model is working for us, almost annoyingly so, because I'd love to just do exclusive and free content and exclusive vault content, but that just doesn't get the same bang for our buck. It doesn't get as many people signing up as the current way that we are doing things. And so I'm constantly experimenting too with how we sell our content, how we get people to sign up for the vault. And so we're trying to improve that all the time. So, but as a current subscriber, simply watching the content, leaving comments is actually a big part. Not necessarily the comment saying, hey, this is why I'm a vault subscriber, but simply engaging with the content, that indicates something of interest. So, because if 2 videos get the same number of views, but this video has 100 comments on it and this one only has 10, then I would assume that this is a better video because it creates more engagement and more interaction with the vault member. So I would say watch it and leave comments. And you don't have to like go in and force yourself to be leaving comments on things you don't want to. It should be a natural process. Wherever you feel compelled to leave comments, whether they're positive or negative. Just talk about whatever content it is that you are looking at. Joshua Nole. Hi Matthew, why does MiniWarGaming not do any tactics or analysis battle reports? As a new player, I sometimes wonder why a battle is fought a certain way, or why a unit is moved to a certain spot. Would you ever consider doing a lower point battle report where you take time to explain why certain moves or attacks were done? And why no Shadespire? Shadespire, hopefully we'll be able to cover more soon. It's just a matter of time to cover all the different games. That one's an easy one. We do like it, so it's not a matter of like or dislike. As for the tactics and analysis, well, we are going to be focusing more on this. We technically have our post-game shows for our Vault members where we do talk about the tactics and analysis of the game. And we are pushing more for our employees to do that on a consistent basis and have kind of this consistent way that they do it as well, the types of things they talk about. So if you're a Vault member, then every battle report, majority of the battle reports, I can't guarantee every battle report, should have a post-game show where we talk about alternatives. Talking about it during the game can get cumbersome, both for the players, because if you're telling your opponent all your tactics, then you're kind of giving them away. And also for somebody watching might not want to slow down what's already kind of a long video. You're talking that the average battle report is an hour and a half. If you all of a sudden spend more time talking tactics, you're gonna raise that up to 2 hours, and that's gonna make it harder for people to watch. Not saying that that's not valuable things to put into it, but that's why we separate it into a post-game show. That way the game is done, you're able to analyze it afterwards, talk about possible list variations, things that went right and things that went wrong, and just analyze the game overall. So we're going to be focusing more on doing better post-game shows. In the future, we may do tactics series where we analyze things and all that, but the players here at MiniWarGaming are tactical players, but at the same time, we're really casual in narrative too. And so the thing is, we don't have enough knowledge of all the different armies that we could really cover all the armies for tactics. Like, there's certain players that have 1 or 2 armies that they would be able to give you good tactics on, but then everybody would be begging for all the other armies. But if nobody really plays them that much or at all, then the best we could do are just math hammering tactics where like this appears that it would be good. Or myself, I played Tyranids a ton, but I couldn't tell you how to build a Tyranid tournament list because I never do. Or Genestealer Cult, I've really enjoyed them, but I can't tell you once again how to play them super competitively because while I try to be competitive in my battle report, it's not usually in the list building where I'm competitive. It's more once we're in the game that I am. So there are lots of little tactics that we could teach beginners, and maybe one day we'll do that. But it's just not high on our priority. We're more focused on the narrative and casual side of things. Karem Bagchi? I can't remember. I don't know how to say that last name. I'm sorry, Karem. And I have a tickle in my throat that's not going away. Are there any plans to put on a regularly updated map for the Apothis Crusade so that we can keep track of who is winning and who is losing? Well, I don't plan game to game updating anything. And so the short answer to that is no, because what I plan on doing instead is at the end of each phase, I analyze all the battle reports that are done, and I decide as a GM, from a narrative point of view, where that puts all the different factions. And at the same time, in tandem, I am already building for phase 2, because the Harlequin narrative campaign is building towards phase 2. It's going to introduce new armies into it. The Dark Heresy role-playing game show that we're doing is building something as well to help bring in more stuff into the Apothis, kind of the MiniWarGaming cinematic universe. And those are the two main ones right now. I've already started to plan the next narrative campaign. So basically, once this Dark Heresy role-playing game show is done this season, and once the Harlequin narrative campaign is done this season, then the Apothis Crusade will end. We'll update everything, and we'll start phase 2, which I don't even know what it's called yet, because I got to see how everything ends, because I don't want to predetermine exactly what the MiniWarGaming cinematic universe will look like. We're not Marvel, where they can plan story, because a lot of it's dictated by how the battle reports go, and I want that to be the case. I want guests who come in and contribute actually feeling that their games contributed to the overall story. Obviously, the narrative campaigns have more of an impact than an individual battle report, but the collective group of all those battle reports does add up to affecting the narrative. So I do hope that we'll have updated visuals on that as we continue along the way. Martin Neal, a couple questions. I've noticed that your Codex or Battletome reviews have stopped, or at least not as consistent. That's true, along with follow-up battle reports. For example, I don't think we've seen the new Necron Codex in action yet. Not totally true. I did use it in the Harlequin narrative campaign, but it's not the same. I didn't use their stratagems or warlord traits or any of that kind of stuff. Have you taken a business decision to move focus away from this kind of video? No. We are wanting to do them. The problem is time. We've been strapped for it, is really what it comes down to. Dave going over and working on the bunker is actually put a lot more workload on everybody else, which is perfectly fine. We want the bunker to be built. But it does create a bit of a lack of the amount of manpower that we do have. And simultaneously starting the Dark Heresy role-playing show is actually taking a lot of manpower as well. I don't think people realize just how much that costs the business to do that. I know people are like, it doesn't cost that much. You know, it's only a few hours, but it's more than that. There's all the opportunity costs of all the things we could be making. There's the fact that there's actually a lot of between game stuff. And so the Dark Heresy show, coupled with Dave not being here, has kind of tightened up our ability to stay on schedule, which then when you hit things like Adepticon, like during Adepticon is when the Necron Codex came out. So, you know, we lost a week's worth of work there. And then when you have them coming back to back, it's been hard to keep up. Our goal is to continue doing reviews for them and to do battle reports when they come out. But we have kind of conceded the point that we're not a news and review channel. That is not our purpose right now. It is content that I do want to include, but it's really a matter of when we're able to get our hands on the book, combined with what our current schedule is, with guests coming in, narrative campaigns, and role-playing game shows. Because in the end, those are what get us the most Vault signups. The reviews don't do as well as the other content, so they are secondary, but we are trying to do them. Let's just put it that way. Like the Deepkin, for example, we'll hopefully be doing a full review and all the models as they come out, that kind of stuff too. Number 2, from Martin Neal. Without giving away spoilers, not cut up yet, how have you found being a GM for the Dark Heresy games with the guys and the odd but usually hilarious things that they do that seem very out of character for an Inquisition's force? It's been a challenge. I've been loving it though. I've absolutely been loving it, but it is a challenge, a big challenge. It's partly because it's a big group. I knew going in that having 6 people was going to be hard. I've role-played, I've GM'd groups of up to 7 people in the past. I've done a lot of GMing in my life. I've probably GM'd a dozen different groups. And so I've got a lot of experience, but this group has given me a new challenges, let's just put it that way, of maybe having a little harder working well together, which is hilarious because they're all employees that do work together. Out of character stuff, yeah, I do find that a lot of times that they're like, I say to them, I'm like, well, sure, that's your background, but you're also working for the Inquisition, so why wouldn't this come to your mind? So we've been having a lot of between game discussions about how everybody can improve, including myself. So and I think that we're going to be improving. It's kind of it's a skill that people need to learn, including myself as a GM, and how to handle the different kinds of players, because in the end, different personalities will play the game different ways. But overall, I've loved it. It's been so much fun, and I've been really enjoying doing it, and I'm glad that we're doing it. The future of the show is going to kind of be in our viewers' hands, though. I'm pretty sure that after this campaign is over, that we're going to need to do an Indiegogo campaign to be able to do it, because the number of vault signups and the amount of views that it's getting is just not been enough to really make it worth it. I kind of regret having it in the vault, to be honest. I wish this one was just totally free and we weren't making any money from it, so we could kind of build up the fact that we're doing this. But I think we're going to need to raise some money in order to be able to do the next season, just because when I did the calculation of what it's costing us and what we're not making because of it, meaning all the content that we could be making, it actually does really cost us a lot. And at this time, with working on the new bunker and how tight our production schedule is, I really need to be able to justify it, and I really, really want to. So I'm thinking of having an Indiegogo campaign probably in a month, like once this campaign is over. And so hopefully people will be willing to support that. And we need to raise at least $20,000, let's just put it that way. And remember, it's not just the cost of doing it, although that is a good chunk of that. It's also the cost of not doing other things. Like, in all honesty, I'd want to raise $40,000 or $50,000 to make me feel super comfortable about doing another season. But I'm willing to cut that back because it's still a new show, and more build up the fact that we're doing them. That could get us a bigger audience and all of that. So that's my plan for the next one. And I know some people are going to be like, oh, that's total bull, but you don't know my numbers. And that's all I can really say. I can say with confidence that these numbers are not extreme, that they are very real, and what we are dealing with MiniWarGaming's costs and the content that we're making and analyzing what we're not making by making something else. So, and we're limited in what we can do, so I have to be very careful with that. And your third question I've already answered, because talking about being the GM. All right, so next one, Brian Butler. I'm seeing Blood Angel players really struggle to win games in this edition, and the problem gets worse with each Codex release. Your studio has a large Blood Angels collection. How are you addressing this challenge? We don't, because we don't really struggle with that. No matter what the meta is, we don't play tournaments. We don't play win-at-all-cost players. The people that generally come in, the people that travel to play in our battle reports, are very rarely a win-at-all-cost players. Some of them end up being that kind of player, but the majority of them come in for fun. And so they're just wanting to they want to show up, usually they want to show off a cool painted army or a neat conversion or just play. And so we don't have to deal with those kind of meta things. Now, at the same time, we do, because I remember like when the Necron Decurion first came out a couple of years back, I had to stop doing certain things with the Necrons because they're too good. Or when the Tau got their update in 7th edition and they became ridiculously good, then I had to work with that. Or when the Tyranids sucked in 7th edition, then I had to kind of adjust what I was doing according to the player I was up against. For example, if they were bringing something that was really, really strong, I wouldn't play Tyranids. So we do react to it. So I guess me saying before that we don't have to deal with it is not totally true. But we don't have to deal with it like how a person who only collects Blood Angels and that's all they play, and they go to the store and the same 5 gamers are there bringing the same power lists, have to deal with it. Because we have a huge collection, so you'll see our attention shift towards something else that we'd rather play. So we live in a big MiniWarGaming bubble here about how wonderful the hobby is for us, because we have access to so much terrain, studios, we're paid to play, we have best players coming in. It's like the best club in the world, because all the people coming from around the world are usually super awesome, and it's just so much fun to play with. So that's kind of the way I see it. I'm going to switch over to the YouTube community to answer some questions from there. We're doing really well for time. I'm getting through a lot of these, which is good. And that wasn't all the Facebook ones. I'll come back to Facebook. So if you're like, oh, no, mine was on Facebook, I didn't see it there. Okay, so Alexander Magnus, is there an army in Age of Sigmar that has caught your eye like the Tyranids did for 40k? Yes and no. Primarily no. I love so many of them. It's not no like they all suck. In fact, the thing that I loved about Age of Sigmar from day one was how cool the models looked. I would say after playing the game with Steve, which you haven't seen yet, with Stormcast Eternals, I was surprised by how much I liked them. I was also surprised by how much I liked the Seraphim that Steve played, because I just didn't think that they'd be that interesting. Death armies look really cool. The Chaos armies actually are really cool, because Chaos in Age of Sigmar is so much cooler than 40k Chaos. 40k Chaos is like, oh, I beat a demon, and so what? That was just a piece of the bigger god. In Age of Sigmar, it actually feels like you're fighting more substantial things. And there's much more cool story to them, I find. So I think I'd actually get into Chaos, including Skaven. Like the Tzeentch ones, the Khorne ones in particular are really cool. The Nurgle ones are cool. Slaanesh, not a big fan of those types of miniatures, as I've talked about in the past. Hopefully they'll update them eventually. But more Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle all look really cool. I don't think I'd be super interested in Nurgle just because I'm not a fan of the slow plotting, hard to kill armies. Although playing Stormcast Eternals is kind of like that, I don't think it's at the same level that Nurgle is. And Skaven just looks super cool, so I'd love any of those. So I could see myself, if I had to choose an army, I could see myself being torn between a lot of them. Probably Skaven, some sort of Death Army, maybe Tzeentch. Yeah, that's probably like the three I would narrow it down to, just off the top of my head. Dax the Destroyer. We know Adeptus Titanicus and Kill Team are on the way, and there are rumors of Battlefleet Gothic returning. Do you think it's possible to create a campaign system that would integrate these with 40K in a way that would be fun and not a logistical nightmare? Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember growing up, I played Battletech with Dave, and Battlespace came out, and they actually had a campaign system to integrate them, and it wasn't too bad. Now, mind you, those games are logistically very busy anyways, but I think you could do it. You'd have to keep it simple is really the key. You wouldn't want to be like, keep track of each individual fleet. It's more like how we're doing the Apothis Crusade. It's like we know the areas, play whatever game you want, make it make sense narratively, and then we'll kind of track it from there. But you could have a more solid like systems and who has control of these voids or the spaces between the systems by degrees. Like this one has this much control, this one has this much control, or just like somebody has control over it. And so that when you fight in it, whoever has control gets some sort of bonuses or things like that. Or if you fight in a system and you've got control of all the void space around, and that gives you some sort of bonuses. So it wouldn't be too hard to come up with a straightforward campaign system that would integrate them. It is my goal one day to do that with Battlefleet Gothic, but you've got to play Battlefleet Gothic to do that. Corey Bragg, I really hope you talk on your Age of Sigmar experience. I'm not going to do much here, just because Steve and I, I think we didn't. I think the video was an hour and a half long. Basically, we played the game, and then we sat down immediately afterwards for at least an hour, probably an hour and a half, maybe even, I think it's an hour and a half. And we just talked about the experience. But we didn't just talk about the game we played. In fact, we talked just a little bit about the game. We talked about Age of Sigmar as a whole. We had debates as to like the random turn length thing and strength versus toughness versus the 2 wound thing that they have. Talked about the lore, what's really drawn me into it, and at tons. It was a very thorough discussion on Age of Sigmar, kind of like a super late review, but taking into account all the stuff that's happened for the past 3 years. So I'm not going to talk about that here because it's very, very thoroughly done, and that'll be coming out hopefully next week. Tabletop Banter. How do you think you could better improve the balance of the games in the Apothis campaign, given that already some guests have used win-at-all-cost lists and played with the mentality when the idea of the series is to forge a narrative in the MiniWarGaming cinematic universe? That's always going to be a challenge. And you're going to get that challenge at your local store if you try to do a cool narrative campaign, and we get that challenge here. I had that challenge at when we used to run the Apocalypticons yearly, where we'd have like 500,000 points come in. There'd be those players who just plopped down their stuff because it was cool, and the other ones that min-maxed everything and made really strange conversions just so they could bring a ton of the same kind of unit. So you're always going to have that. How do we deal with it? We can't possibly predict which guests are going to be win-at-all-class players and which ones will be more fluffy players, and be more selective on in who actually comes in as a guest. So it's really just up to the employee, the person playing with them, to try to make it as best an experience as they can. And sometimes that's hard, and sometimes it's just the nature of it. We don't record battle reports, review them, and say that wasn't really good, so we're not going to put it out. We put out every battle report we record, with very, very, very few exceptions. A guest comes all that way, we're going to make sure their video goes up, even ones between employees, because we just don't have time to film 3 and choose the best one. So it's just going to happen. And basically what you're watching is just the games as we play them. We do our best to try to balance and make interesting scenarios and narratives, but it is what it comes down to. Oh, and also you say, love your content as always, particularly Luca's work with the Gal Vorback show. Probably referring to our role-playing game, is what I'm guessing. Ben Angstad, would it be possible for us to start seeing a more diverse spread of armies? There's a lot of Ultramarines and Dark Angels and their variants, but I've noticed chapters like Salamanders and Imperial Fists don't get much love. Any chance you guys will be branching out a bit? We always try to, but there's only a handful of us. Like we've got me, Steve, Quirk, Josh, and Luca, and then Dave when he's here. So 5 people, even if we each knew really well 3 armies, would still only be 15 armies. And you're talking just about 1 army and all the different chapter tactics within that army. So that's hard, because people complain that we get rules wrong, which we do. I don't think it's as bad as some people think, because I think if anybody records their own game and puts it in front of 10,000 people, they're going to find, oh, I'd actually got a ton of rules wrong too. It's actually just part of the game that is so complex you're going to get things wrong. So get over it and move on and enjoy the game. So the thing is, the more you play, the more armies you play, the harder it is for you to learn the tactics and the rules for that. Because you're basically watching us play the majority of our games. That we don't. The guys do go to the local stores and play. I don't. I don't have time. I have 4 kids, very busy life. I don't think I'd be into miniature wargaming if it wasn't for my business. I wouldn't have time for it. I just wouldn't. So I get it when people say I don't have time for this hobby anymore. I totally get it. So there are games being played outside of this at tournaments and stuff, especially Quirk. He goes to tournaments at the local stores. I know they play after hours. Steve has his own channel as well. But it's still, you're still seeing the vast majority of the games being played by these players on camera. So it's like, hey, I want to play Orcs for the first time ever. It's on camera. And so you're going to see the flaws of the tactics and the rules. But then I play 10 games of that. But after playing 10 games of that, 2 or 3 months have passed and I haven't touched these other ones. So going back and forth between all the different armies it can be hard to get the rules straight. So we're doing the best we can. I'm not going to force the guys to diversify. I want them to play what they love to play. Because in the end, like I said before, the purpose of this channel is to have fun, is to give you fun battle reports. And sometimes that means focusing on just a few armies. I know that there's always going to be people, the majority of people, saying, I just wish you would focus more on the armies I want to see. And maybe one day MiniWarGaming will be so big and have so many employees, no joke here, that we're going to be putting out so many battle reports that you can be like, I can't possibly watch all your battle reports, but I love Tyranids right now. And there's like 3 Tyranid battle reports that came out just this week because of the vast number that come out all the time. So I'm satisfied just with the Tyranid videos. And then later on, I'm like, now I'm interested in Imperial Guard. Well, every week, you still, just by nature of the number of games that are being played, there's always a lot of Imperial Guard. That's my dream one day, to kind of have that level of things where, and then once again, not just 40K, but then diversity of games as well. But this is a small market, so I don't know just how plausible that can eventually become, how big this business can be. We just have to wait and find out. So ask me again in 10 years. Rouge CJ, love your videos. Please keep up the great work you do. My question is, I've been playing Tyranids for a while now. I was wondering what is the unit that you love using the most? Not necessarily because of its power, but because of how fun it is to field. Thank you. I love the Carnifex Old One-Eye combo. I don't know what it is. I just love bashing forward into things and having just these incredibly powerful close combat beast. And I'm not talking about Doc effects. They're good, but I enjoy 3, 4, 5 close combat Carnifexes. We're talking like Crushing Claws, Scything Talons, Bioplasma maybe if they want that, with Old One-Eye nearby, and maybe a couple Psychers to buff them so they could run and charge. Give them all Adrenal Glands. You don't need Toxin Sacs, but Adrenal Glands for sure. And just charge them forward with Old One-Eye supporting them and giving them all their plus buffs. And then Old One-Eye, of course, Wrecking Face as well. So I enjoy them the most. They're not by any means the most powerful thing. They can be scary, but 8 wounds, 3+ save. You can shoot through that pretty quickly if you want to. And I love that Old One-Eye now is a character with 9 wounds, so that you can't target him until you've killed all the Carnifexes in front of him. So I really enjoy Carnifexes. I also really enjoy Gene Stealers. I love that they're really good now. That's partly why I like them now, but I've always loved them. I just love the scariness of how fast they are. And so the fact that they're even faster, even better at close combat now than before, I really like those. So those are my 2 favorite things. But I do like a lot of other things with Tyranids too. Suzanne Prusser, do you have an interest in playing bolt action? Personally, no. I know other guys here do. And once again, playing other games right now is something we're working on. So maybe you'll see bolt action eventually. But I don't personally have any interest in any historical games. I know bolt action is a simpler one from what I've heard. But yeah, just not interested right now. I've heard it's a great game, but that's just not. Maybe one day I will be. Ask a question about David. I've already answered that. Fulgrim King. Matt, I do not really understand the overall narrative of the Apothis Crusade. Could you please clarify? Thank you. I think that's one thing that we're going to have to do better. Maybe we need, like, at the beginning of every episode, a reminder, just a quick 20-second blurb. Basically, first off, it's part of the MiniWarGaming cinematic universe, so it's our little universe within the universe of 40K. We don't touch things that are super canon, like you won't hardly ever see named characters, because, we don't know what Games Workshop is going to do with those. So it allows us to explore more and do a lot more. But the current Apothis Crusades builds off of the Warzone Apothis we did a few years ago, where, and so I'll just tell you the current one to keep it simple. There is a system, the Apothis system. In that system, there are a few planets. The most important is Vatarak, which is a forge world that used to be a tomb world. Well, now I should say it's a tomb world that used to be a forge world. In Warzone Apothis, it was a forge world that they knew there was a tomb world, but that one awoke and they got kicked out. 100 years has passed, and the AdMech that were kicked out have gathered a lot of their Imperium allies and have come back, which is why it's called the Apothis Crusade. They're trying to retake Vadarak. But it's been 100 years, the Necrons have come awake. It's actually been taken over by another dynasty, the Sautek dynasty. There's also an Orc attack moon, if you know the Beast Arises. So there's this huge, it's not a rock, it's like the size of a small moon. It's not a Death Star, it doesn't have big beams that blow up planets, but it's currently there as well because it's trying to gather a few resources that are there. And that's being led by Big Mech Skarbog, which was one of the Death Watch orcs from a previous narrative campaign. And so we basically have this three-way battle going on. You've got the Necrons, who are defending against the fleet that's coming in. You got the Imperium fleet, and you got the Orcs. Secondarily, you've got the Tyranids left over from the Warzone Apothis. Their back got broken, basically, in Warzone Apothis, but there's still remnants of them infesting all the planets and all of that. So they're there as well. And there are some remnants of Chaos. They can be played, but not as much. So that's currently what's going on. Once this one is over, then it'll expand, and we are going to start incorporating other armies as well, so you'll see more of them. That's the basic story. It is going to be hard to if you come in later on. It's kind of like coming right now into the Marvel universe. It's like, okay, I've got 18 movies to watch to catch up, but each movie thankfully is self-contained enough that you don't have to know all the stuff going on, but it just is beneficial too. Michael Treadwell, is it too late to get a Tau Codex review? You know what? Steve put one up on his channel, and I'll promote it because we never got around to doing it, and he was able to. Mountain Miniature Games. I can't remember what it's called. Just search for Mountain Miniature Games, Tau Codex review, and I'm sure you'll find it. So he actually, I haven't watched it, but I'm assuming it's good because he's the one that was most interested and did a lot of reading and had a lot of discussion on it. So there should be a good review there. Let's answer a couple more YouTube ones, and then I think we'll be done the free. Oh, you're already past half an hour, but I'll answer a couple more YouTube ones, maybe one more Facebook one, then we'll switch over to our Vault one. Xenos Player, what do you think about the idea of potential restrictions of one of each type of HQ per detachment that some people are suggesting might come out in the FAQ, especially the impact on Genes to the Cult and Tyranids? I think a blanket statement wouldn't be a good idea because that doesn't make sense for certain armies. Like Genes to the Cult, yeah, you can argue there should only be one Magus, but even in the lore, it talks about sometimes there's more than one Magus. There should only ever be one Patriarch, but it doesn't say that he's unique. And I'm glad it doesn't say that because as much as lore-wise it doesn't make super sense to have a couple Patriarchs, it's fun sometimes to have a game where you're spamming them and just having them all run in. Tyranids, I wouldn't worry that there's only... I can't think of a Tyranid game where I try to bring more than one of the same HQ in a detachment. I guess sometimes I'd want to do a couple Tervagons. I hate the multi-Hive Tyrant thing, so I have no problem with that. I think there needs to be more case by case. Like I would say Hive Tyrant, one per detachment is a good idea. The Tervagon perhaps, but like a Tyranid Prime, I wouldn't restrict that one. I'd say having a couple of those is just fine. Each of them leading a big group of Tyranid warriors. That to me just kind of makes sense. Or the Neurothrope, being able to have multiples of them, each of them leading a group of Zoanthropes, I think is fine. So blanket statement, I wouldn't be a fan of that. I don't think it's necessary. But going in more specifically and tagging things and saying this is one per detachment, like the company commander for Astra Militarum, that makes sense. It's one per detachment because that detachment would be that company kind of thing. But then you get the Imperium soup kind of thing, so I can really screw with all that anyways. Tempester Malteser, last YouTube community question for the free one. Do you think there are Chaos Nids? In the lore, no. But I'm not saying that it was beyond the lore to do that. Now that we have High Fleet Kronos, which has been specifically designed to go anti-chaos, what's to stop Games Workshop from writing in the fact that maybe they actually do manage to infest some Tyranids. I know that Tyranids have been resistant to that in the past, but it's not out of the realm of possibility for being in there. But right now, I don't think in the lore there are any. Doesn't mean there won't be any in the future. So one more question from Facebook, and then I'm going to switch over to the Sit and Vault. Sergio Valdivia Trujillo? I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that. Hi, Matt. I'm hoping to run an Age of Sigmar campaign with my friends soon. Are you going to put the rules for your campaign on the website so we can maybe use it? I would love to try your system for it. Whatever system I come up with, I usually like to post. However, might I suggest to you looking at Firestorm? I just recently looked at that, picked up a copy. It came out like a year ago. I think it's fantastic. From what I can read and all the contents of that box set, it's like I think it's like 60 or 70 US, but it's one of the first campaign systems that I've seen Games Workshop release, where I'm like, that's a good campaign system, because I've seen them release it for the Mighty Empire tiles, which I didn't like. Like their old Necromunda and Gorka Morka campaigns and the Blood Bowl leagues are all fine, but like seeing their new Necromunda campaign system, not a big fan of that. And like the one they came out with for Mighty Empire tiles is just so basic and so simple that I'm not a big fan of that either. But I would suggest looking at Firestorm. It's a 4-player one. If you want more than 4 players, you got to buy another box to get you 4 more, because it comes with decks of cards and a map, and it just looks really cool. So I would suggest that. But yeah, I will be posting whatever rules I do come up with for whatever campaign I do. Okay, so that's it for our sit and talk. Immediately right now, our Vault members, you can click the link below to go and watch the sit and Vault, so you can continue watching me answer more questions for another 30 minutes. Of course, if you haven't done so yet, leave questions for Josh and Lee for next week at the comments below, preferably on our website. It just makes it easier for us to see who's a Vault member, who's not, and also to print off the comments. But even here on YouTube is perfectly fine as well. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the Sit and Vault.